Well, if we've all known Peter Drucker, if you don't, you should. He's a modern inventor of business management training, and he's written 39 books on that space. He is now seen as the absolute guru in business management, and his number one quote is this one: if you can't measure it, then you can't improve it. And that's what we're all about today. We're going to talk about 4 separate numbers that we need to know. It's a bit like when you go to join the gym. The first thing when you go to join the gym is they pop you on the scales. Everyone cringes, but that's exactly then you understand where you are now. We need to know where we are now, to where we want to go, then we can track it along the way. Property management, no different in that sense, and we really want to talk about what is it that we need to know, 4 numbers. Where is it we want to go, track it along the way. What is it that we want to achieve, that's what we want to grow. So let's look at what are those 4 numbers. Well, the first one is they're all about how many properties you currently are generating income right now. The second one is how many of those, what is your average weekly rent across it, what is your average management fee, and then lastly, what are your extra fees and charges. Now, some people will ask me, well, what is extra fees? Well, let's talk about that in a sec, but first let's look at Mr. Hodges. Mr. Hodges has a business. He has 125 managements, and as you can see in that, he's got 15% in extra fees. Now, extra fees are things like let fees, relet fees, it could be account keeping fees, and as you can see on these, landlord insurance. We talk about adjacencies is another thing that are added, and they're all extra fees. Now, from extra fees on after that, we're going to go back into what those 4 numbers are. And then we'll go down to the bottom of this, and it talks about a number called a double AMI. That's the average annual management income per property. And that's how it's calculated down the bottom, but don't have time to go into that. But let's just say it's 1,551. So that's how much you're making per property. If I times that by how many properties, then you're 193,000. Your 193 is what you're making each year in that pocket from those 125. That there is your numbers. Those there are the 4 numbers we're looking for. Now, if you're going to sell that or buy that, then it's times by a multiple. And as I like on this slide, what's that magic number? Well, there's very little magic, and there's a lot more facts and figures to it. But one of the key things in this day and age now is the geographical spread. A buyer that looks to buy your business wants to be able to walk out his front door and fall over the managements in order for him to say, yep, I'd like to buy that. Here is a prime example of that was down on the Gold Coast. And by the way, we have half a dozen that are up in Brisbane as well. Ideally, a double AMI is $1,600 to $1,800. Anything below that, and some of the southern states that we're copying it on here on live stream, they may have a lower management fee but a higher weekly rent, so it all works around, but around $1,600 to $1,800. So that's what we know what it is. We've hopped in the scales. Now we're about to track it, and what we want to do as far as track it is this very simple one here: is what's your plan? Know what your numbers are, so know where it is now. What do you want to do every quarter? We want to whack back on those scales and figure out where we're going, so that by the end of 12 months we can say, hopefully, we've achieved it. Then we know what our numbers are, to track what our numbers are, because at the end of the day, all we're about is growing. That's what we're in the business for. A little bit more in back pocket, and also maybe in your superannuation fund. So, how about, let's work through as an example of how could we go with increasing Mr. Hodges' business over the next 12 months, another $100,000 by just making some small tweaks. Well, the first tweak we're going to do is he's going to add 2 more properties roughly per month. So over the whole year, if you look at that second one, the management was now improved an extra 25. On top of that, he's increased it 1% as far as his management fee. He's increased his weekly rent by $10. And if you looked in his extra fees, he went from 15 to 20%, which increased it $25,000. You combine that with the other tweaks, was another $75,000. There's your $103,000 in his back pocket. If it's times by 3 as a multiple, then he's also sold it potentially for $300,000 more. So recap, 4 numbers. Did I mention 4 numbers? How many properties are generating income right now? What is your average management fee? What is your average weekly rent? And what are you getting in extra fees? If you know what those numbers are, those 4 numbers, then you'll be able to track where you're going with them on a regular basis to grow. And at the end of the day, That's all you need to be focused in on your business. 4 numbers. Bing, done. Thank you.